Hi, welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. I'm Glenn. I'm going to be your host. Wait, where's the thing? Where's the little light bulb? Oh, you took my prop away? Hi, welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. My name is Glenn, and I am your host. And Behind the Curtain is actually a metaphor from The Wizard of Oz. People never want to see what's behind the curtain. There's a man, or in case of the movie, it was a man pulling levers. But to prove I am Glenn, the actual authentic Glenn, and not the AI, I have an idea. Get it? Light bulb? Idea? No emojis, no AI. All right. But you get it. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing catch up. A few months ago now, we did a whole bunch of cool episodes. I even recorded a video talking about Canadians are in denial. And we watched the video today. We never launched it because we're like, people are still thinking out. Canadians, we like our information in spoonfuls as opposed to shovelfuls. And we realized that the video meant more now than it did 5-6 months ago. And 5-6 months ago, we thought we nailed it. And everything is more. So what this is going to be, it's going to be kind of like a whole kind of cool conglomerate of a bunch of information. There are going to be so many statistical accuracies that we're going to try to nail. But what we're also really focused on is the conceptual, critical thinking of common sense at the same time. When you add 1 + 1, you should equal 2. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of the people in the media, a lot of people in these YouTube videos, they know one thing and they base it together and they try to give you, that's what this means. I'm like, no, that isn't what that means. Because I'm a big fan of understanding if you watching this right now, either a business owner, a consumer, anybody who's basically contributing to society, if you feel something, then more of you feel something, but we never know that. And as a result, I truly believe that the number one factor that most people have to pay attention to is consumer confidence. If you don't think the stock market's doing great, if you don't think your business is doing great, if you feel it on a day-to-day basis, on a frontline capacity, you are way ahead of all these people with statistics and information and telling you what this should mean or that should mean, or people who have a vested interest in making sure the content you get is exactly the way they want the message to be. I think that's all bullshit. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't have any animosity because they're also trying to make a living or trying to make a point or trying to make an impact. But when it boils down to it, I don't know. Sometimes it seems we've lost critical thinking. Sometimes it seems we've lost common sense. When you add 1 + 1 to equal 2, or A + B + C + D equals E, that should always be the same thing. And over the years, that is what I've come to learn is to be true. Watch the patterns. Forget about all the rhetoric. Forget about all the bullshit. Forget about here's why the government says this or why a realtor says that or why an auto dealership says this. Those are usually skewed because they need a message. But you're smarter than that. We're all smarter than that. And what's really getting me at this point is the information is trying to be more confusing than enlightening. So behind the curtain is to try to take it back. Yeah, there's tons of statistics, but you and I are both going to find out today that statistics, what do they really mean? Why? Because numbers, although they don't lie, it's interpretation of the numbers that sometimes does. So we're going to read some headlines. We're going to go through some stuff, but when it comes down to it for you and your business, if you're feeling it at the front line, if you're feeling less customers, if you're feeling the fact that people aren't buying the same way, you are absolutely correct in your feeling because your gut, your instinct, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, will know, especially if you've been in business for a while. But those of us who've been around for a little bit, been a few decades, been through a few recessions, all the way back to like 1970s, 80s, and 90s, then you understand that there are things that are real implications of what's going on. Are we in a good environment or bad? People are still thinking optimistic. Real estate prices are going up. And then you got to ask yourself the question, if there's nobody buying and there's lots of supply, Economics 101 kicks in. I mean, I took economics in the University of Toronto, and it was my first year economics, and all I remember is supply, demand, and elasticity. I think elasticity is one of these things. I don't know. But I know this. Simplicity. If there's a high demand and low supply, price goes up. 25 years of real estate in Canada. If there's a high supply and low demand, prices go down. Current market. And you know what? You're feeling it. And the media is doing a great job of letting you know that these things are happening. So as a result, is your confidence in more robustness, or is it, oh my gosh? Now, none of this is to be doom and gloom. I'm a huge believer in the minute you understand something, you can deal with it. Yes, some of it's going to feel like doom and gloom. And yes, all my stuff tells me there's going to be a little more pain to come. But is that because we got so excited about what was going on and we left common sense at the door and we were buying real estate or purchasing things and keep going because we thought the world was going to go on forever? Well, there's always an adjustment, always. This one, it's been almost 25 years since just now, 2008. We're going to say there's an adjustment, but really that was a real estate mortgage thing across America and the world. Canada was very much actually beneficial in that market, even though we didn't. Sorry, beneficial is not the right word. That was wrong. We didn't get impact as much as the rest of the world because our banks do things differently. And although I think that also caused a bit of a problem for us because it gave us a false sense of security that, oh, our real estate dipped, but it didn't get crushed. Let's just keep going. Pandemic comes along. All of a sudden, we created this FOMO, fear of missing out, and pandemic and realtors and mortgage brokers. Everyone's throwing stuff at the wall and better get in. It's going to keep going on forever. And there became this almost 25-year cycle of prices going on forever. Well, that's impossible because if our price of real estate is 2 to 3 times what it was 10 years ago, our incomes are not. Math, numbers don't lie. So anyway, as business owners, we have so many clients that tell us that the people in their industry are feeling it at the bottom line. Our clients are kind of gotten a bit of an advantage, but we'll talk about that another time. Because in these markets, the ones who speak the loudest and stand up and go at the market and go at the message and take the problem head on have an advantage over everybody else who's trying to figure out how to save money and still take a profit. It's counterintuitive, but we'll get there. So I'm going to start this because the old adage of, be weary if you want to see the man behind the curtain, because once you see behind the curtain, you can't unsee behind the curtain. That's why a lot of people want to believe in the wizard. And it is my favorite metaphor because once you go behind the curtain, there's no coming back. So I'm going to stop you now and let you know that I'm going to take you behind what I believe to be the curtain. The things that they say but don't explain, things that will benefit you, but if you only see it right, and the interpretation is basically the perception of the majority of what this information is. Yep, stats, information. I'm going to read headlines. I'm going to give you stats from the government, from surveys, from all this stuff. And at the same token, people take that information and they turn it into a message. And I just want you to be ahead of everyone else by understanding there's more than one message. Don't take everything at face value. Don't take everything they're saying right now because everyone is trying to make the story sound beneficial for them. And right now, all I care about is for you to get the right information so you can make decisions because there's stuff coming that we haven't even begun to deal with yet. And again, not doom and gloom, just every one of our clients, I will tell them what I believe to be going on. And they will tell you over time that it is held true. Not because I'm statistically right, because conceptually, okay, if A plus B plus C plus D equals E, it happens pretty much every time. And that's where I want you to be. For your business, for your family, for your situation, for your longevity, for your peace of mind. The more information you have, the more advantage that you have. But it's not just stats. It's not just information. It's not just metrics. It's understanding what they mean. So let's kind of dive in here. I've got it. Now, this particular video will become dated over time. If you're looking at this 10 years from now, know that we didn't know what we were doing because we weren't paying attention to all the data at the time you're reading this 10 years from now. If you're looking at it today, you can be ahead of the curve and get going. First headline I came across as I was talking to the team about doing it goes like this. Canadian housing starts set to slow through 2028 as demand weakens. CMHC, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Now, I've been talking about this for 3 years. Now, 4 years. In fact, one of my team members tell you I've been bugging the crap out of him for 5 years about how things are going to be turning. And he looks at me once in a while and he goes, yeah, you were right. I say, I'm not right. It's not me being right. There's a pattern, there's statistical analysis, and history repeats itself. It's just a matter of longevity and how it works. For those of you that lived through the 1990 recession when real estate hit the biggest downturn in Ontario history, for those of you that lived through the 70s and saw the oil crisis and everything else going, for those of you that lived through 1990 or 2000 and the Y2K and the market shifts, all those things are real. but we forget what it feels like to be in one. And we don't usually recognize we're in one until after it's already happened. So I want you knowing we've been in one for years. I'll explain. Why does Canadian housing starts set to slow in 2028 as demand weakens? Same HC. Demand has been weakening for a couple of years. However, we were using the optics of propping everything up because builders don't want you to know that. Realtors don't want you to know that. Mortgage brokers don't want you to know that. Banks technically don't want it. And the government doesn't want to make it look like there's things that are going bad. Totally get it. If I was in those businesses, I'd want you to think, yay, too. However, that also means those of you hanging on to try to get a price of a property you thought was worth 2021, 2022, and you got emotionally attached to your home, because here's what happened. One of your buddies, one of your family, one of your friends down the street sold their house. You go, my house is nicer than them. They sold it for X amount of dollars. Mine's at least worth that. And you hang on to that emotion, you've missed the entire point of what numbers are doing. Now you go onto the market. You think your house is worth it. Your realtor agrees with you. Why? Why wouldn't they agree with you? Because the higher the price, if they sell it for that, boom. But what's happening around you in real time is the demand is dropping exponentially and more inventory comes on. Back to Economics 101. So let's read this. I just want you to understand it. Canada housing market is heading into a slower... Okay, if I stumbled on the words, it's only because I'm reading faster in my head than I'm reading in real life. That was just brutal. My apologies. Canada's housing market is heading into a slower construction cycle with new home starts projected to decline over the next 3 years as economic uncertainty weighs on buyers and builders. There is no economic uncertainty. Let me give you the real stats or real perspective on that. Okay. In 2020, 2021, builders went crazy to get ahead of everyone else. I can show you properties where they would never get approved today, but back then, everybody's getting fees. And here's what happened. Provincial governments, municipal governments were adding on fees, federal government adding on fees. Everybody's going through the market and they're making a whole bunch of money. And who's paying for that? You, me. Why? Because as the prices go up, someone's got to pay for it. It's not the builder. Now, because the demand goes higher, all construction costs go up. The dollar per square foot goes up because all of a sudden there's a high demand for wood, or there's a high demand for flooring, high demand for windows. It's just supply and demand. Economics 101. Now, today, 5 to 6 years later, as these buildings are coming to fruition, there's an inventory glut. You've been hearing about this. Oh my gosh, last year, people are walking away from $100,000 deposits. Why? Because it's a mess. Nobody wants a $300 to $400 square foot, 500 square foot. And forgive me if I got the square footage wrong, but they call them the dog crate condos in Toronto. Now, that message doesn't translate into Calgary, doesn't translate into Edmonton. But as those were going down, people moved to Alberta, going, okay, it's cheaper in Alberta. And then they push that market up through the roof. In BC, Vancouver, same kind of problem that was going to be happening in Toronto. And all of a sudden, everybody's pushing to get as many of these condos out because they think the demand's going to go on forever. And all of a sudden, everything shifts. Market shifts. Geopolitical environment shift. Our relationship with our closest neighbors shifts. Now, if anyone tries to tell you the tariffs alone are the reason, it's bullshit. Our market was on the move down before the tariffs ever came in. This is a great cover story, great camouflage for what's going on. Because if we went to immigration and then went to immigration zero and people were living 6, 7, 8 people to a house and you could rent them out and charge everybody $300-500 a person and cover your mortgage, great. But the reality is in Canada, for 25 years, how do you buy a single family home with a suite, rent it out and cover the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and the fees that run the property? It was almost impossible. But all of a sudden this happened. People were then flipping properties by using these condos, by buying in at low price. But the way it works is you buy in early enough, you get the lowest prices. The builder keeps selling, the price goes up. By the time your condo's built, you should be able to flip it, make a profit, or sign the contract or whatever. These are all real techniques. But when everyone's doing it at the same time and there's no one to buy them, that, by its very nature, is crazy. And by the way, honey, the wrapper does not make any sound. We both looked over like, ooh, we want turtles. I love turtles. What's that? Sorry. No, honey, you're okay. It was the joke was we both went like this. Turtles. Turtles. So what does it mean? There are families who were helping their kids get the deposit for a down payment on their home. There are families, and look, Ron Butler, who's the angry mortgage guy, one of my favorite videos to watch every single day. Not because he's got all the right stats, not because he says all the right things, because he says it like it is. He says it like he means it, and he gives a shit. And that's important today because a lot of people are basically they're doing self-awareness about what their content is. That man is something else because he just nails it because he wants you to know. And that's hard to find, right? So, but going through it all though, you look at the statistics and he was talking about, and I know it to be true, but he talked about it. And he talked about the fact that there are families who borrowed their money, equity, HELOCs in their own home to help their kids or their family get deposits on property because everybody had to get in. The fear of missing out, it was crazy. Prices are going through the roof. You better get in because, there's a lot of people who had a vested interest in telling you that made a lot of money, who are now trying to say everything's great. But if you've got X amount of volume and only X amount of buyers and nobody wants your property, then there's going to be a race to the bottom who can get the lowest price out to get the sale because now it all becomes about motivation. And what it really means is you've got people who've got HELOCs or second mortgages on their home. Interest rates are kind of not going to be going down anytime soon because we're about to get inflation and cost of living and gas prices and grocery prices. We already know that you're feeling it, right? So again, we're back to the consumer confidence thing. You're feeling it. So what it really means is if we got all those condos and they all come to fruition, what we've seen in our own local markets is it looks like contractors are slowing down the progression of getting them actually finished so they can keep their employees together because once they're done, there's no new projects coming. Now, that doesn't mean that an electrician or a plumber isn't going to be able to go and service somebody's house and fix their plumbing or electricity. What it means is the mass, how many electricians can absorb into a market? Because if you're using 20 electricians or 30 electricians on a project, well, once those 20 or 30 electricians get back in the market, now 20, 30 more electricians are all fighting for your home business. Now it's a fight to the bottom. Is it the best price? Is it the best fact that I can get the fastest service? Everyone's got to fight for attention now. And this is the business part. Whether you're in home services or not, construction is important. Now watch, it's kind of get things. According to CMHC's latest housing market outlook, housing demand will remain subdued in 2026 and beyond. That's like, where do we go, Buzz? To infinity and beyond. Why? Because there's no number because we don't know when the demand's coming back. And if people start losing jobs, and there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of layoffs, I don't know, is the construction industry going to have a lot of layoffs? We're going to see in a second here. What does it mean? Consumer confidence goes down again. Why is that important? You own a coffee shop, you own a furniture store, you own a hair salon, you own multiple restaurants, you own a consulting company, you own a coaching company. You own a computer programming company. You own a appliance store. You own a cabinet. You own a landscaping. Pick one. Everybody's going to be looking for things to do. There's only so much finite time that people can basically hold on to the business they've got. For those of you running your own business right now, if you're not driving hard into being the front of mind, then your competition's about to go through the roof because people are going to be fighting just to make an income to pay their bills. Problem with that is now it's a fight to the bottom again. And this cycle, let's say I'm 50% right, 20% right. A 20% advantage for you right now means that you stay ahead of the game. I don't think the number's as low as 20. I don't think it's as low as 50. I'm going to go higher, but that's just my perspective. But let's see if my perspective holds up against the numbers. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter what Ron Butler thinks. It matters that he cares. It matters that I like to think I care. What's the point in doing this? I could be sitting doing something else too, but you're going to think about that. And I want you to understand something. I spent 25 to 35 years of my life trying to help businesses get past the noise, get past the information they're saying. Everyone will tell you what's going to work. But at the end of the day, the only people that really know are the people who've actually had blood, sweat, and tears, beat their head against the wall, had the blood running down their face, been up against the wall when you had to pay the staff or the bills or the suppliers or the vendors. Those of us that have gone through that are the only ones that really can share. Anybody else is just giving you an opinion. And even though mine's an opinion based in fact, in my own fact, there's a lot of stuff that if you pay close attention, it's just common sense and basically critical thinking. And I think that's where the loss is. And now with the advent of AI, at the end of the day, holy crap, we've even given up critical thinking because we think a computer can be critically thinking better for us, which is great and ridiculous simultaneously. Watch. This is the quote. We expect Canada's economy to grow slowly in 2026. As many households and businesses remain cautious because of geopolitical and trade uncertainty, Kevin Hughes, Deputy Chief Economist at CMHC, said in a statement, this caution is leading many households to delay buying homes and making builders more hesitant to start new projects. Okay, at the beginning I said let's read between the lines. I would never contradict anybody's own statement. but let's look at it from a different lens, if you will, right? We expect Canada's economy to grow slowly in 26. That's what I would want you to think or believe, and that's how I would lead my statement if I am basically hoping that you keep good consumer confidence, but then read the rest of it. Many households and businesses remain cautious because of geopolitical and trade uncertainty. That isn't going away anytime soon. This caution is leading many households to delay buying homes. Delay buying homes means those of you right now who are looking to sell a home or basically keep your business going because you've got equity in your home as your equity's going down. Okay? Listen again. Caution is leading many. You tell a Canadian to be cautious, and we think you just said DEFCON 5, right? You tell a Canadian there's ripple in the financial statements, DEFCON 5. We are ultra protective when it comes to our finances. And if the households are delayed buying homes and making builders more hesitant to start new projects, then they're saying, we don't believe, the builders are saying, we don't believe there's enough demand to even begin starting a new project, which will still take 4 to 5 to 6 years to get approved and built. That means they're not willing to take a risk for another 4 to 5 to 6 years. Okay, sorry, I'm going to do that again, see if I can get the impact. That means builders are not willing to take a risk for the next 4 to 5 to 6 years, which means they believe there is excess enough inventory to hold for 5 to 6. That means they believe the current inventory is going to take 4 to 5 to 6 years. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea. This is what we call common sense or critical thinking. I don't know for sure specifically, but you get the idea. The idea is if the builders don't believe, then they don't have to hire all the electricians, the plumbers, and the framers, and the roofers, and the drywallers, and for another 4 to 5 years. Where are they going? I mean, the people who do those jobs, where are they going en masse? They've been busy for the last 5 years consistently, and for the next 4 to 5 years, there's a consistency that says we're not going to hire in mass based on what this quote is. That's reading between the lines of a very nice quote. What does it mean for us? Well, if roofers, electricians, pavers, plumbers, and so on and so forth aren't working en masse in the next 4 to 5 years, where are they going to go? They can't be absorbed into the regular market because the people who are electricians, plumbers, and so on that do your day-to-day service work weren't hired by these other companies to do the big projects in the first place, and they have a clientele. They have a market. They have a localized environment. That means the market now has to absorb all of these electricians, plumbers. How? How many people need electrical work? And that's what I'm getting at. This is how you have to read between lines. So if they're not getting hired and they feel they're not making as much money, what happens to their consumer confidence? They leave the consumer confidence like it's the last thing. It's actually, I believe, the most or one of the most important things you can think about. Let's go on. I'll prove it to you, right? In the consumer confidence, there's a video that we'll reference in this video. Bloomberg, BNN Bloomberg, a small company that has a lot of great information. It says Canadian consumer confidence hits 11-month low. That means over the last 11 months, it has been declining and now hits the lowest point in at least 11 months. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean it was high 11 months ago? That's, again, reading between the lines. It just means it's lower than it was 11 months ago, which means it didn't go up when they said all these other nice things. It didn't go up when they start recognizing. As Canadians become familiar with what's going on, as we settle into this whole geopolitical southern neighbor uncertainty thing and realize, look, shit's going to happen. We're Canadian. We're resilient as shit, right? And we're going to be able to survive and do things. And that is true to certain extents, right? Now, in this Canadian consumer confidence, it says 50% benchmark is the benchmark. 3 out of the 4 the Canadians were interviewed in basically has the ability to say, hey, that's not good, right? And they're in the key areas that we think to be true. So that becomes important. And by the way, I'll give you an idea what it says, okay? Personal finance, the Canadian economy, and real estate are all below the national average of 50. In fact, they're in the 20s and 30s at the best. That's the confidence level. That means the non-confidence level is higher than that. They try to, of course, do the spin. They say job security is the highest, and I just pointed out one. Now, you've been running your business. you got your clients. Your core clients will stay with you. And if you're in that kind of business, that's great. If you're brick and mortar, you're subject to either walk-ins and or referrals and or what you do for a living or your product or service. If you are a service agency, service business, home services, you are basically, again, you've got your client base, but you're about to get flooded into the market with people who are handy that need a job and or need a business to run. And the economy itself is controlled by things that you and I can't handle or basically see. That means our retirement funds, our information funds, our reserve funds are usually in items that our advisors have given us. And personal finances, well, as soon as we get into that world, this is where Canadians pucker up. And so one last thing we don't want to talk about, but as a business or as a person with these financial situations, although we're not talking about it, it has the lowest score of confidence rating at the lowest level, because that is how we feel it on a day-to-day basis. So if your customers are feeling it at the lowest basis, then understand that today is something called the buyer's market. Let me try to help out in a real simple term. If you have a product or service where you're not the only one, I am now apt to try to save money, and I'm now apt to go in and try to figure out who the best is at the best value for the best money. Now, that leads into multiple challenges for your company. One is you may end up in a race to the bottom to give the best discounts to get the more clients, but then you end up killing your margins. So what was the point? Most companies don't use increased value, which they should use to get the better client, because incentives and rewards and perceived value actually create a 68% higher range of response and retention as a customer, because we'd rather get something of value than get 10 or 20 or 30% off. That's just statistical, right? Common sense says everyone loves to buy this, get that, or if I get this, I get this for free. We love that kind of stuff. Not enough companies do it. Another totally different video, but you get the idea. So as companies are going to be into this world of trying to fight for clients, one, you've got to get new clients coming through the door. Two, you got to basically take your clients that you have and try to figure out if you can basically get more revenue from them. And three, got to keep the clients that you also have very happy, so they're telling people and referring. So if you don't have any of these mechanisms in place, you've got to spend a lot of time and a lot of money to try to get this business and keep it going. If you're one of those people that has a business, so let's say a coffee shop, we have a regular clientele coming through the doors, fantastic. But over time, the buyer's market means if we're feeling it a pinch at our home, at our business, at our own paying the bills, we will find alternatives and take the time to find alternatives to get the same product at a cheaper price. Costco, Walmart, Amazon, you can have all the electronics in your store that you want, but we all know online with free shipping means that I can get the same product at a lower price for a better price. So this is a pricing market, but it's also a value market. And every one of our clients is positioned in the value position, because if somebody gives something of value and the perceived value is higher than the actual cost, then you have a higher chance of being a client, or getting a client for life, or doing business with this person over and over and over again. That is absolutely fundamentally statistically accurate. Now, with that also comes the fact that people can make choices. Now, it used to seem like a buyer's market when they talk about real estate, but go to a car dealership, go to looking for marine products like boats, go to furniture stores, go to appliance stores. The minute the buyer has the advantage, the seller is no longer in control. And for a couple of decades, in real estate specifically, seller was in control. Car dealerships, seller was in control. During the pandemic, seller was massively in control when it came to cars and real estate. And now it is completely 180 degrees from that, because now the pinch is on. Now we're feeling it. Our groceries, our gas prices, all the supply chain stuff, the same stuff that happened right after the pandemic, right? But this one's different because it's not controlled by a one virus, turn it on, turn it off. Once we've got control of it, everything goes back to normal. This is bigger, it's deeper, it's faster, stronger, because it controls and it's connected to everything. And it's not just about a virus. Oh, maybe it is. Depends how you want to look at some things, I guess. But for that purpose, think of it this way, right? Canadian businesses, the offerings, the layoffs, and so on, the headlines come out recently, and here's the one that caught my attention the last few days. Now, again, if you're watching this in the weeks to come, it was still a big enough headline to get my attention. Rogers, one of the main staples of Canadian majority companies is laying off. Sorry, not laying off. My apologies. Is giving and offering retirement packages to 10,000 of its employees. Now, here's the crazy part about that. 90%, 80%, 70%, 60%, 50%. There's going to be some percentage that just says, no, I'm good. But there will be a percentage of people who take that package. Now, let's say, and just for this example, this is not a statistic. This is not a known number. I'm just going to do, for example, what if 10% of those people take that? Right now, those people may not be actual retirement age, but they're taking early retirement, taking the retirement package. Their brain tells them, I'm in this business. I have these skill sets. If I take this package, I get some extra money, and I still have a chance to go out and get more money by getting another job or doing another part of this, find another employer who does and wants this kind of stuff. Well, that's great if everybody wasn't doing the same thing, because what we went in and said, okay, let's have a look at some statistical analysis, right? Here, now, AI is phenomenal for certain things and creates a bunch of slop and shit for other things. But productivity, keeping things together and getting statistical information, as long as you review and get accurate information, is great. So we started going, how do we validate what we're talking about here and take this whole conceptual and common sense thing and this critical thinking thing and anchor it? Because your business depends on it. Our business depends on it. So we want to get it right. Now watch this. We said, hey, can you give us the Canadian business layoff statistics for 2026? Now, different AIs give you almost, response time is different, but almost identical responses came across the board. So we're going to use Gemini because Google is the one that most people used to use anyway, because we just Googled it. Now we Gemini it because Google put Gemini at the top of their Google, which means it knocks out all the SEO. It's totally different video, but let me get the idea. I'm just going to read this. Just says Canadian business layoffs 2026. And there's some really freaking awesome statistics in here. Okay. I'll just read it. As of early May 2026. So if you're watching this and we're recording this in the first few days of May, this is like right up to date stuff, right? Man, I just went through puberty in that sense. Did everybody hear that? Up to date stuff. I can't even duplicate it, but my puberty is finally coming through. So thank you. Thank you for waiting as long as you did. All right. As early as May 2026, Canadian businesses have experienced significant layoffs with over 37,800 workers laid off year to date. Anybody seen those numbers? Well, you kind of see it in the unemployment rate. But here's the weirdest part. Some of the unemployment rate numbers don't always go exactly the same way as the layoff numbers go because the statistics tend to get presented in a way that benefits the presenter, right? Okay, so here we go. As of early May 2026, Canadian businesses have experienced significant layoffs with over 37,800 workers laid off year to date. Now, I don't know if you know the statistics. I don't know if you've seen this metric. I don't know if you've even heard these numbers. But that's a very interesting number, and you're about to see why, because in this particular, whoever presented this number forgot some stuff. But we'll get there, right? Here's why. It says it's primarily driven by cost pressures, common sense, right? Gas, groceries, travel, everything. Supply chains, right? Here's one that's kind of thrown in there as a quiet. It says AI-driven restructuring. So now let me ask you a question. 1,000 people accept the early retirement for Rogers. In Rogers' mind, they're going, okay, I wonder what they could be replaced with. Hello, my name is AI. You get it, okay? And manufacturing slowdowns. Hardest hit sectors. Now listen closely. This is where it gets wild. Hardest hit sectors include government, finance, and technology, and with Ontario and British Columbia seeing the highest volume of job cuts. I wonder where the highest real estate is. I wonder where the most projects of real estate were. I wonder where the biggest vacancy rates are. I wonder where the biggest empty condo closures are. I wonder where the biggest deposits that people are walking away from are. I wonder. Sometimes it's so obvious and people don't pay attention to the obvious. So this is what we're trying to do behind the curtain. Now watch this. Major 2026 Canadian layoff announcements and trends. This is the ones that they put in here as the ones out of that 37,000, et cetera, plus to go. Listen closely, and then I want you to try to tell me which one they left off the list. Let's do this. Manufacturing and industrial. Algoma Steel is cutting 1,000 workers due to production shifts and tariffs. That one is definitely a tariff-attached one. But where do 1,000 steel workers go? Finance and technology. This is awesome. It said it's called CBOE. CBOE. Global Markets is cutting 20% of its workforce. Block Square is reducing its global workforce significantly, citing AI-driven restructuring. I mean, let's be real. You ask ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, Anthropic, whoever your thing is. And by the way, if you're not familiar with AI yet, it's this new thing. It's coming out. And if you're paying close attention, you can ask it a question. It'll give you an answer based on an entire database of information that it may or may not have gotten from somewhere else, but has a lot of data and can answer your question. Let me put that in perspective for you. Financial advisors, all the information they have is in every AI, which means if you ask AI the same question as a financial advisor, it could probably give you the same answer without the financial advisor. But the difference is trust. Remember that word, trust, becomes very, very important. But if finance and technology is cutting 20% of its workforce because of AI, they're not replacing the workforce. Where did this 20% go? Again, we're going back to the same critical thinking, common sense issue as we do over and over again. Telecom and media. Rogers Communications, already talked about, offering buyouts, while Bell Canada cut 60 positions in digital media. Bell. While the CBC cut nobody and kept spending money. That's not in there. It's not in there. I just threw it in there because it just seems CBC doesn't have to cut anything. Anyway, this one is hilarious because then we have to question everything I've said up until this moment. You'll get the joke in a second. Government and education. Statistics Canada announced 850 job cuts. I think it's funny. Think about it. I'm giving you all the statistics, and Statistics Canada has cut 850 jobs and yet provides statistics every month about unemployment. Come on. There's a fucking irony in that. That is hilarious, right? And these statistics, we have to question all of them now because we don't know where we're getting them from, because if they cut off 850 jobs in Stats Canada, minute, that's all, folks. Hold on, we're getting back to serious statistics. Conestoga College is axing 181 positions. I don't know what that means. Retail and food. Newell Brands, owner of Sharpie, is cutting 900 jobs. I guess it's not a Sharpie anymore. Guess it's more like a Dully. Come on, that's funny. That's funny. I'm sorry, I should be talking to you. 900 jobs, 1,000 jobs, 850 jobs. Okay, this all adds up real quick. Sector outlook. While some sectors are cutting, RBC Economics notes a slow, uneven improvement in overall employment, though the first quarter saw significant job losses. How the hell can you say that? We see a slow, uneven improvement. Well, first of all, that's actually a true statement. A slow, uneven is correct. That's like an oxymoron. Improvement in overall employment, even though we had massive or significant job losses. Well, you got to ask yourself a question. Who's benefiting from that statement, right? So RBC Economics wants you to feel good because, our banks don't make any money without you. They don't. I mean, they do now because they've got our money, but kind of how it works, right? So in that world of tariffs and AI integration, unemployment rate, it's stubborn, 6.6, 6.7%. You know what? The average should be closer to 4 to 5, but don't worry when it says 6.7, 6.8, or 6.6, or if it gets to 7%, what could possibly go wrong? Look, there is a lot of hyperbole. There's a lot of blah, blah, blah about AI is going to take 10, 20, 30% of the jobs. Maybe, maybe not. It's not about what we're talking about. What I am going to tell you is just because you have AI doesn't mean you're better. It just means you can be more productive. You have access to tools. You can do things differently. You might be getting to market faster. But, as a business creative, as a business message, as a business direct to market, as a business how to connect the dots and get your customers to come across the bridge and give you money for your product or service, AI is good. They're not that great. but you'll see the difference, right? Job market shifts. While permanent layoffs have eased slightly since late 2025, restructuring and temporary layoffs continue to affect major industries. Again, they just basically contradicted themselves in a sentence. So what does it mean? We should hire those 850 people back for stats because the stats are all over the place. Look, I'm not trying to make light of it. This is pain, and I don't want any of those people to be in pain. I don't. But I also want you to be aware that just because the numbers are there, I want you to go back through those numbers and tell me, after everything I just said, what industry wasn't included. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll read it for you. As of May 2026, we asked it another question. I'll let you determine what the question was based on the answer. As of May 2026, the construction sector in Canada, particularly British Columbia, has experienced significant layoffs with thousands of jobs lost due to canceled projects, high financing costs, and a slumping housing market. Over 40% of the Canadian home builders have reported layoffs. Where was that number in the last question? In fact, it was left out of the last question. In fact, it shows us that in early 2026, it is reported that 100,000 jobs were at risk in Ontario's construction sector. And it just talked about BC. Then you add that to BC, and then where do they go? Alberta? Alberta's about to get some construction loss too, because you know what? No one's buying there either. Because when the sentiment, when consumer confidence goes across the board, your business is affected, every business is affected. Every business. And the businesses that survive now, they're the ones that give the most value to their clients, their customers, with the most respect, with the best customer experience, with the best trust, with the fact that thing. And one of the great, this sentence has stayed in my head. And I thought I've said a lot of stuff over my years and done a lot of stuff. And some of you will remember it in a different video, but it is worth repeating right now. One of the closest people in this company to being a genius in his ability to take what we say and go, just say it like this, is he said, all businesses have to do to survive is be better. And he was right. Just be better. Why? Be better than them. Be more proactive. Be more customer oriented. Look at the law of reciprocation. Look at the law of gratitude. Look at the law of attitude. Look at all the things, because if there are 11,000 restaurants closed, or 7,000 restaurants closed last year. Another 4,000 are going to be closing now. Those are daily people who need and live by the fact that you have extra money because you have discretionary income to spend. Well, it's the moment where you realize that the everyday businesses like restaurants, like coffee shops, like bakeries, who live and die by margins that we use as discretionary income, then easiest way to keep people coming back is be better. Be better at being a business. Be better at being you. And I don't mean that you're not great at being you. I just mean be better at letting people know that. Be better at the experience. Be better at the conversation. Be better at the results. Be better at the rewarding and the incentive and the gratitude and the attitude. Take the time to send a handwritten note. Do the things, because during the heat of a market like this where consumer confidence is gone, if someone is deciding to spend their money because they need that product or service that you have, they will choose whoever treats them the best. They will choose whoever's got the best opportunity or deal. Sometimes that's about perceived value. Sometimes people go with discount. I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but I will tell you this. People will value the process. And imagine all these statistics. All it really means when it boils down to it for you is if you're not paying attention, if you don't basically use your own common sense and recognize that consumer confidence is the lowest it's been in a long, long time, then why are people buying? Why do people don't need to buy stuff? People will get into that whole, you know what? It works now. It'll work for another year, as opposed to before where they might have gone, it's time to get a new one, right? I mean, look at iPhone. Just look at them. As soon as they come out with a new one, there's a certain number of people who go out and buy it no matter what. Even though the camera is whatever it is, and it's the minuscule things that make a difference. It's got the aluminum case or the platinum case or the tungsten case. It doesn't matter, because the rest of us who live in a practical world go, mine's still working. I'll wait till it's another time or another deal or whatever it happens to be, or I can get one for this or I can get one for that. When it becomes a buyer's market, you have to take the time to entice the buyer to do business with you. That's Behind the Curtain. See you next time.